So I just moved into Delaware, and I, couldn't get Screencastify yet. So this isn't a Screencastify; it's just a video. But I'm using a whiteboard to show how far the Mets have fallen. But note that this is not totally accurate. So these standings through 8/21. So they don't take into account what happened. Well, actually, we said it's an upload for yesterday's games. But I don't really think it matters too much what's going on. The data is right in front of us, and it's stunning. And I'm going to mostly focus on the Mets, but there's some other things. First of all, the Cubs have completely blown their chance of winning Essential, but not even really through a fault of their own. It's because Milwaukee has been so unbelievable that they're 80-48. The Cubs, they're 73-55. So they've played like 500-ish ball. I'm not saying 500-ish ball is good, but the fact that they're 7 back of the NL Central is pretty staggering. Dodgers and Padres, they're separated by 1 game, but the Dodgers have clinched the tiebreaker already. So it's really more like a 2-game difference, since if they tie, the Dodgers will get it. Nonetheless, we're seeing a competitive division there again. And between Cubs and Padres, that could also become very competitive for who hosts the other. Because right now they both play each other. What's in play is it going to be at Petco Park in San Diego? Or is it going to be at Wrigley Field in Chicago? And, the Phillies and Dodgers, and I believe Phillies are the tiebreaker over there. That's also going to be a very important, important race to follow. Who hosts the 6th seed in the wild card round? Who has home field advantage in the 6th seed in the division series, or versus the 3 seed, with a bye? So there's a lot at stake here. As of now, it would be the Dodgers playing the Mets in the wild card at LA Stadium. At the Dodger Stadium. It will be Padres at Cubs as well. Winner of Dodgers Mets would face the Phillies. Winner of Padres Cubs would face the Brewers, and that's how the playoff picture would go. But like I said, I didn't really want to wait until at the time of this video, and some of these games are late, like the Reds game in Arizona. That's not going to be done until 12:40 tomorrow. So this could very well change a lot, especially, a team like the Mets falling out of it completely. And this is what I wanted to emphasize. Because as you can see, pretty much every single team is comfortably in a playoff spot, except for the Mets. Like all these other teams, they're fighting for something. Brewers, they need to keep their foot on the gas pedal for the 1 seed, which they currently have a 6-game lead on. And the division, which they have a 7-game lead on. Phillies, Dodgers, obviously the race to the 2 seed. That race to the 2 seed. You want to have that. And for the Dodgers especially, they need to worry about the Padres in the division being right behind them. The Phillies are 7 games up on the Mets, so it doesn't really matter. But again, it's the same as Brewers Cubs. And the Cubs and the Padres, you really don't want to fall behind the Mets or the Reds, but at this point, they have Padres have 4.5 games and a tie, and almost certainly gonna have a tiebreaker. Cubs might have a tiebreaker, and they have a 5.5 game lead over the Mets. So it's not really anything too nerve-wracking, as you realize the Phillies actually a 1.5 games up on the Dodgers. Not just a game. But I digress. The thing with the Mets is that they entered play on the 22nd, half a game up on the Reds. There's a real chance that the Mets could, lose today, Reds could win today, and then the Mets lose their playoff spot entirely. And that's stunning when you realize what has happened. This was the Mets' high water mark of the season after play on 6/12. They were 45-24. They had their struggles. They were the best team in baseball. And now for best team in baseball, in case anyone was keeping track on the scorecard, they trail by 12 and a half games. And they don't have a tiebreaker against the Brewers either. There was, like when the Mets were collapsing at first, I thought, it was like, at first it was like, they may not have the division. They may be stuck as the 4 seed. And it's like, oh, crap, here come the Brewers. Maybe the Mets are going to be stuck as the 5 seed. And then it's like, oh, they collapsed behind the Padres too. They're now in the 6 seed, which, granted, 6 versus 5 doesn't really matter too much. Now I'm like, there's a real chance the Mets don't make it altogether. Some nighttime skies for you. Like, there's a real chance the Mets don't make it altogether at this point. They're only a half game up on the Reds, and they don't have a tiebreaker, at least as of now. And you need to take at least 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati to get it. But again, this is the high water mark of the season. Reds were like a 500 team. Reds still are not that great. I'm going to be honest, the Reds are not that great of a team. But the Mets have been so bad, they've let the Reds come back. And the Mets would be fortunate that a lot of teams like the San Francisco Giants, the St. Louis Cardinals, they've kind of fallen out of it a little bit because it's really only the Reds who have the toughest schedule remaining in the MLB. Whereas the Mets have a bit of an easier schedule, so it should be a little bit tame on the Mets. But what happened was stunning. Because that was their record on 6/12. This was their record. This is their record. 7-2 between the double H games. So between the doubleheader games, they had fallen to 48-38. But then the Mets seemingly ended their struggles. They went to 62-44 when they enter, after Sunday Night Baseball, 7/27. And now 67-60 could fall further. It's really stunning what's happened to the Mets here. Like, it really is. They've hit. No one would have thought on the 12th that the Mets would have hit 60 losses before they hit 70 wins. They could honestly still hit 70 losses before they hit 70 wins, which is really stunning. They go on these prolonged cold stretches. In this case, they went 3-14. Currently 5-16. And they had a 14-6 in between, but that's not going to be good enough. At this point, the Mets had a 5.5 game lead in the division. They blew that, and by this point, they were behind the division by a game and a half, 2 games. Then, at this point, they were up a game and a half in the division. Now they're 7 back in the division. The division's out of reach. After, the Mets had a chance to put the division completely out of reach, and they couldn't by completely imploding. As you could see by them going 22-36 now. 22-35 because this is supposed to be a 1. But still. It's stunning what happened. And there's several reasons for it. They have had many blown leads. They've had many failed comebacks. They seemingly lack any kind of grit or identity. There are a lot of games they get blown out in. The hitting is bad. The pitching is bad. Everything for the Mets is bad. And really, you have to realize that 22-35 stretch is also inflated by the fact that the Mets had a 14-6 stretch in there where they actually were coming back from deficits, where they actually were a good team. Take that stretch out. 8-30, I want to say. And that is very shocking. The Mets at multiple points this season had odds greater than 96% to make the playoffs. Now their playoff odds sit in the upper 70s, mid 70s even, maybe even they're mid 70s, I think. That is absolutely unacceptable. The Mets could outright miss the playoffs with this high of a payroll. I don't want to say the season is over. I really don't. The Reds have a tough schedule. The Mets have an easier schedule. And there's really no one else in contention besides the Reds. But again, all this means that if the Mets do collapse, it will be the most embarrassing in MLB history when you take into account all the circumstances. Not just having an 8.5 game lead in the playoffs and blowing it, and 45-24 and not making it. Not just that, but also, signing Juan Soto in the offseason and being one of the biggest payrolls in the MLB. The Steve Cohen era has been an embarrassment and a failure to the MLB. So